full of those island boys. Little girl, use your head. They will tear you up like a paper toy. Oh, no, no, no. Yeah, 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 yeah. Oh, no, no, no. When they smile at you, darling, and wink, it's a lethal force that'll bring you down. Trying to get you tipsy like a drink. Love drunk girls all over town. Oh.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to It's Layered. We're Bizak. I'm Rumbi.
And I'm Amanda.
Yeah, we're so stoked to be here today. We've got some special guests in the house. Zimbabwe's finest, two guys who have made Zimbabwe laugh for many, many years. They have been in this podcasting game for a hot minute. So stoked to have the guys of Two Broke Twimbos with us. We've got Dan and Phil over here. They are just creators in their own right, not only with their podcast, digital creators. We've got a radio host, MC, music aficionado. I don't know, I could go on and on. They're just doing the things, representing Zimbabwe loud and proud. And we're happy that they could join us to talk a little bit over here on It's Layered. Well, it's morning for me. Good morning, guys. How are you doing?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Before we continue, I think we've got to do the mandatory check. Do you mind just giving us our full intros, just so we just know?
If we know you guys, like if we know you guys. Okay, so
because we were told that, oh yeah, we listen to your podcast and stuff. So yeah.
Okay, so do you have questions you ask, or we just roll into what we know, what we be knowing about Two Broke Twimbos?
No, we want our full intros as per the podcast. So every episode we introduce ourselves. We would like you to.
I have failed. I'm going to admit I have failed.
On the spot.
On the spot. I have failed. Amanda, do you know I have failed dismally?
I don't want to attempt and fail.
Yeah.
I'm very shy.
Maybe we can ask you to do the intro for us. It's Layered X Two Broke Twimbos. So we'll give you the platform, gentlemen.
You know, Phil, it's like people just lie unprovoked, you know?
You know what I mean?
Unprovoked.
Particularly Zimbabwean women. No, Zimbabwean women.
Don't go there.
They target you and they say, my fellow Zimbabwean, just lies, spewing.
Well, you know, I've been noticing you for quite a while, and I love how you move. You know, I'm a big fan of the things you do.
We don't want to divulge all our secrets.
Exactly.
Do you guys have a meeting where you come up with these lies?
No. I don't know how much we know.
We know what we know. We just want to know if you know what we know. That's the thing. So
again,
like a Zimbabwean woman, that one.
Philip. Also, just to let you guys know, for some reason in the past few months, we've been interviewed in a couple of podcasts, and we keep making the mistake of taking it over. So, Phil, if you can just suppress and allow yourself to be the guest, not the host. Yeah.
It's okay.
That's very targeted.
I'm sorry, Phil. I feel your pain. We still love you though, and we're glad you're here.
Well, to show you, we've been listening to a lot of the mental health segments, because it's something that obviously we were like, wow, like to even talk about this topic, to even like not only as one episode, but actually have lots of different guests on, and it's just been really, really enlightening. So we are listening. And that's something that we would love to delve deeper on with you guys today. Because, like, what does mental health even mean? Like, what do you guys think it even means?
Philip, would you like to answer?
Well, I think now the common nomenclature is mental wellness, because we want to be more inclusive.
But it's just that. It's just understanding that we live in a very difficult and traumatic country. We've been through a lot. We continue to go through a lot. Culturally, this isn't something that is spoken about or acknowledged. and we're just trying to do our bit to help, because I personally was in a bad place and I needed mental help. And if I didn't have access to the resources that I did, I probably wouldn't be here today. So that's, in short, that's what it is. It's just trying to, spread some positivity, to help the people that need to be helped, and
to be the change that we want to see in the world.
Good on you. Have you
Just
seen
to say
any
as
stigma
well,
though attached to that? Sorry, Dan. Sorry, I'm totally.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say to Phil, have you seen any stigma in sharing a story?
So I was actually thinking about this because you guys did like send a few like notes about the questions you'd like to ask. I think there has, but I'm also very privileged in a few ways. Mainly one being I'm a sociopath, and two being that I've always been good at not caring what other people think to a certain degree. So even if there is a stigma around it, it's been very difficult for me to let that affect me taking care of myself, if that makes sense. It's like once I realized I have a problem, I need to fix this. I never really worried, wait, what will people think?
Yeah.
Because my focus was helping myself first. You know what I mean? And the reason why we started the segment of the podcast is because when we took our break and I came back, we were very honest with our audience. Well, I was very honest with the audience that I was dealing with mental health issues, and this is what I had to address for us to get to a place where we can start recording again. And that started resonating with listeners. And then Dan and I realized, wait a minute, if this part of the conversation is resonating, let's figure out how we can double down on that, because ultimately the whole point of having a podcast is to give the listeners what they want. So even within that, I would say there's a stigma, but I'm not gonna, I genuinely can't sit here and say, there was a time I was teased, I was felt attacked. I'll just be like, if someone calls me out or tries to talk about, hey, men don't go for therapy, or men in therapy are weird, I was like, you sound like an idiot right now. You sound like a doof.
True.
I would say as well, so it partly answers the first and second question that you had. So of course, we are based in Zimbabwe, and the podcast is based out of Zimbabwe. But one of the features that we have in our mental wellness podcast is inviting our listeners to write in their own issues and thoughts and experiences and problems. And I would say, Phil, I think almost 100% of the letters we've received are from outside of Zim. Maybe one or two from inside.
No, we actually had a few. So I touched on it briefly in our first episode back, but this past, like the last quarter of last year was really hectic, and I missed a bunch of emails. I'm really sorry, guys. Like it was like 30 emails that I missed. It's bad. And about 30% of those were people from Zim.
Okay.
There were even people that we helped who didn't divulge their location, and then at the end they were like, oh, by the way, if you want to contact me, here's my number, I'm here. And those are all like Zim numbers. So I think we've got a good enough mix. Yeah, I think 30%, especially, you'd say? Yeah, I will say, and this is anecdotal, of course, and we also have a very small sample set, so this isn't scientific in any form or fashion. But when we do get contact from Zim, it seems to be far more severe. You know what I mean? It's almost like the person's nearing breaking point. They really need help. Or it's a friend. It's like, yo, my friend is down bad. They really need help. Please assist. Whereas in Europe, it's just, yo, I'm feeling lonely. I'm starting to feel depressed. I have access to these resources. I just need a little push to start accessing them. Because in certain European countries, they do have access to resources. In certain European countries, I won't mention the names, but when we had a fund available and we were paying for therapy for listeners, some of them were in countries where it didn't seem that there were resources, but therapy was mad expensive.
Yeah.
I'm talking $150 a session.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. Over here in Australia, like everything else is covered, but not mental health. Like they'll literally be like, you can break your leg, then the next day break your arm, we'll pay you, it's fine. But as soon as you say I'm depressed, they're like, oh yeah, that's $200 a session.
Out of pocket, you definitely pay out of pocket, not covered by.
I am shocked. Australians don't take mental health. Australians don't take mental health seriously. The people
And
that
visas.
keep crocodiles as pets
And
don't
Novak
take.
out with the visa.
The mental
Not.
health and visas are the two things Australia
Yes,
doesn't.
keep out, please.
Huh?
It's bad.
So I think basically what I say again, like Phil saying anecdotally, it does seem like people outside the country definitely care more about it. Men specifically care more about mental health issues than inside, even Zimbabweans outside the country. And but it's nice to see that the conversation is growing and more people are recognizing that it's something to take seriously.
That's great. And I think, I mean, Phil alluded to his own personality traits helping him manage the stigma attached to wanting to improve your mental well-being. Maybe I can start with Dan and, with the stigma attached, because you're saying that majority of your requests come from outside of the country. And even outside the country, there's stigma attached, period. Like, we know this, like there is some level of, does it mean I'm failing? Does it mean I'm, there's something wrong with me? Do you understand? Like, how do you deal with that? Or what would you recommend in dealing with the stigma, whether it be family? You hear things like, no laurara too much. People don't identify that those are symptoms of it. You should be happy you have XYZ, people having problems, like bigger problems than you. Or do you understand what I'm saying? Like, there's often like this perception that if you have food to some degree, if you have shelter to some degree, like, you're good, you have your basic needs met. Like, come on, man, there are bigger things in the world. So how do you handle that and the stigma attached with to mental health, mental wellness?
I think there's a need to be a certain level of unapologetic about it. So disclaimer, I'm not in therapy, and apart from maybe one or two ad hoc counseling sessions, I haven't really been in therapy. So let me not speak from personal experience, but just from observing how mental health is treated. I think it's because, like you're saying, many people view it as, in Zimbabwe, it must be you're at breaking point. Like, you've reached a level where you need to be institutionalized before we even talk about mental health. And the fact that little by little the conversation is growing shows that it's just that people didn't understand, or people had never heard or never even thought about it. So the more unapologetic and the more open we are about it, the more we talk about, oh, I'm in therapy. It's not something that should have a stigma attached to it. We shouldn't believe it's something that's a stigma attached to it. So when we talk about it, we shouldn't be like, oh, don't tell anyone. But this, when you're unapologetic, when you're open about it, just like, hey, I had to go see the doctor, or I had to go take my car to the mechanic, I had to go therapy. There's things that we need to fix. So there's things that we're doing to fix them. The more unapologetic we are, then the more it will be accepted. And of course, the first few might have to be the martyrs. They're the ones who might have to face the worst of the responses and backlash and stigma. But as time goes on and as more and more people accept it, then it will become more normal. And I guess the stigma will never really completely disappear, in my opinion, but at least we can get rid of the worst of it just by being unapologetically ourselves.
True. And maybe, Phil, if I can ask you to tag onto that, is then how do you communicate sort of the importance of mental health, like with people who just have this sort of wall? How do you say, like, hey, guy, do you understand, especially from a Zimbabwean perspective, maybe it's family, maybe it's older people, maybe how do we, you want to be unapologetic, but we also want to also be like, hey, guy, it's just like XYZ. Do you have any suggestions or thoughts around that?
I think the most important thing is to obviously reference your personal experiences and be honest. And if you're vulnerable enough to be honest about what you're going through, because a lot of people don't want to talk about the things that they're going through. That A, gives you credibility, and B, it will resonate with the people it's going to resonate with, because there are people who are dealing with the same thing. And the second thing is don't be preachy. So don't be a vegan. And that's like an inside joke, but yeah, just don't be like a vegan.
Like, oh my God, animal products are killing the environment. Oh my God, do you know how much methane a cow produces every day? Oh my God, and you guys are eating so much meat. You know the human body is not even designed to have that much protein. Oh my God, so you're going to have tofu and soy. Okay.
I'm gonna send you a Netflix documentary. You absolutely have to watch it.
Yeah.
Yeah, the moment you do that, trust and believe, people are tuned out. So just be genuine and honest, and then say, yo, it helped me, it might help you. In the same way, if a friend comes to you for advice and says, hey, this guy's not replying text. If you then say, you know what, I don't know all the dynamics of your situation, but I do know the last time when a guy didn't text me back, I realized it meant A, B, C, D. So that's something for you to consider.
Totally.
That's far more beneficial than, he's cheating on your girl. Listen, how dare he? Does he know who you are? Oh my God. No.
Why are you so good at this?
Yeah, it's just, you're killing me. Thank you for that illustration.
It's expressive.
It's very. And I think too, it's also realizing like some people will get it and some people won't get it. Like, my sister's very good at this. She, whenever I'm dealing with an issue and with someone, and she's like, some things these people just don't understand. Like, you need to understand your audience and be like, I'm not going to pour my heart out or leave it all on there for them to just trample on my heart. So also knowing who's willing to understand that. Someone you might express and they just be like, or whatever, and some people will get it. It's also protecting yourself as well from certain people who are going to be supportive and certain people who, will trample on your feelings, how you feel, what you're going through. What about you? What do you think about overcoming stigma, where you are, whether it's home, whether it's, abroad?
I mean, I don't really think there's much more we can add to what the guys have said. Like, seriously, I, on a personal level, I have dealt with mental awareness or mental health and all that and going to therapy. I think for me personally, it was that disconnect from not being home. So it always felt like people misunderstood, right? Every room you enter, people are like, it gets tiring after a while. You're like, bro, I can't keep explaining why my hair changes over the weekend, and like even when you go through heartache and all that stuff, and it's like no one to really get you, no one to really understand. But then at the same time, if I was home, people would be like, you live a soft life, now you want to be like crying over a dude for ages, like get over it. So it's like so hard because I don't know, like it's such a personal thing, I think, with stigma. And I think as Dan said, you just have to be unapologetic because people are going to have opinions every which way.
Yeah. So. I think we saw it a little, well, it wasn't to do with mental wellness, but to do with Nathan. I don't know if you guys are Insecure fans. We are heavily into the show Insecure.
Oh my God, girl, that last season, Issa got her man.
Issa got her man. But we saw with Nathan, with his struggle, and how he started opening up. What was it? Was it schizophrenia? No, it was not.
Bipolar. Nathan had
bipolar disorder. And
you ain't a security. You ain't a security.
It's because I don't like Nathan. Nathan was just persona non grata for me. Really.
No, but you guys need to understand. Nathan was done dirty by Issa. Okay, and Nathan was like, I need to cut out these toxic people from my life because why? Why is my man so comfortable expressing his love for my woman?
Right?
Why is he talking about barbecue? You know what I mean? No. Issa was not only leaving him late night calls. Hey, it's your birthday. I'm with you there.
Welcome to Layers of Insecurity, the number one insecure podcast.
Exactly.
Okay, we will be breaking down each episode frame by frame to tell you everything that happened.
Exactly, guys.
But
That's a business right there.
Nathan did
So
Nathan
Nathan was Nathan knows how to try. You know what I mean? I don't like these jokes about, hey, Nathan never cut nobody at the shop. Well, when did they shoot at the shop? They only shot one scene at the shop, okay? Nathan was out there hustling.
But Nathan also ghosted, and we don't do ghosting, okay? Like,
no, but guys, so I think that's an important topic you brought up. That speaks to some of the issues with mental health is when you're dealing in a depressive or bipolar or anxiety-ridden or stressful episode, you're not thinking logically. And you might not even be able to express thinking logically, because when you're trying to tell someone, hey, I'm going through it, there's a very high likelihood of them not asking, so what are you going through? When you don't want to speak about that because you're already going through it. It's like having to deal with the trauma over and over again. And as we saw, our King Nathan, you know what I mean? Granted.
I'm not co-signing that title.
Granted, you know what I mean? He was going through it. He obviously should have communicated. He didn't. But when he got his mind right, he came back and, you know, and let Issa know what was going on. So Issa should have been cognizant of some of the struggles, because being with someone with mental health issues, you know, you've got to understand that you've got to handle them a little differently. You know what I mean? Granted, they shouldn't be allowed to be abusive or neglectful, but they do need a softer touch, if you will.
But she took it back. So
I say, but I mean, did you see those eyes, girl? Who wouldn't take him back? Come on now.
I would not.
Sorry. What a beautiful man. What a beautiful man.
Anyway.
But I say, Nathan, I don't like how he has been cast as the when Nathan was doing right by him. He was trying his best, okay? My man,
no, he was.
Let's not forget how he met Issa. Let's not forget.
Appreciate if we cut out the last 10 minutes or so from this episode.
But you brought up a good point. How do you deal in relationships with someone who's going through mental health issues? Like on a real, like the ghosting, you can be like, you know, okay, you're going through it, but whilst you're going through it, I'm trying to live our life. Like I'm trying to pay the bills. I'm trying, if you live together, I'm trying to keep it together, right? And also in a culture where we don't want other people to like comment and be like, hey, you know, what's happening? You know, like, so how do you honestly deal in a relationship?
Have some
Dan, Dan, I see you aging. Go ahead, Dan.
Come through.
So this is not from personal experience.
Okay, disclaimer.
No, I'm not talking about you, babe. And this is not about you, obviously.
Yeah, your fiance will be like, what did she?
Okay, so first of all, I would love to hear your opinions. How soon into a relationship should one's perhaps mental health or wellness issues be disclosed?
Before.
Yes, I agree.
So date one.
You're signing. Not date one. Come on. Date one. Let's be honest. Date one is the representative. That is not the real you. That is 5-star rating you. The one who's like, oh hi, I love it.
Yeah, this Zim woman log. You see how these Zim women think, then? You see?
That's not the date one, you guys. Date one. Date one, a vegan will go to a steakhouse and pretend like they are liking meat. Like, let's be real. Date one is not
let it be
real.
noted that Two Broke Twimbos does not endorse lying.
So maybe date three and onwards.
Date 3. Okay. So at some point before you're in a serious relationship, you would disclose that there are some mental health issues that you may be dealing with.
Especially if you know it's going to affect your communication or how you will relate to the person, and then they'll be like, it was fine. And then, you know, I think.
Okay, so if we assume that at some point, maybe by date 3, you're already like, oh, I like this girl, blah, blah, blah. I need to tell her that I have some issues that I'm dealing with. And if she accepts that, maybe a little while later, we might get into a serious relationship, but she will go in knowing, right? So if the other person, if let's say she knows that I'm dealing with some issues, okay, she knows, does that take away the responsibility of my actions?
No.
Because on the one hand, like Phil said, hopefully because she knows she's now dealing with me with a softer touch, because she knows that, hey, I might do or say things in a particularly bad episode that I wish I had control over, but I don't really. And then I did something or said something that was wrong.
What
But
kind of, and at what level? Because you can't just be excusing everything, right?
Sure. So let's use a simple example. Let's say ghosting. So let's say we are now in a serious relationship, and I've just gone quiet for 2 weeks. I've been going through it.
Guys.
So you knew that I told you that I have a thing that I'm dealing with. I told you, you knew that. So how much responsibility do I have for what has happened?
What were you doing when you ghosted? That's my question. So my thing is, we can talk about it after the fact of ghosting, but I would expect a high level of honesty about what you were going through. So I can be understanding, but I should also have some expectations of, we talk about it when you get through that period or that difficult time, and there'll be honesty, and certain things are not validated just because you were going through an episode or a difficult time. Like, you can't have gone and just like sleeping around is sleeping around, or do you get what I mean? Like, there needs to be some level of like.
But aren't you saying that because it's 2 weeks? Because when it's true ghosting, you don't know when it's going to end. This is also true. So you're waking up every day looking at that phone. There'll be no texts, no calls, nothing. No IG stories.
So the reason I bring it up, by the way, is because I think sometimes we put the marker either at 0 or 100. It's either black or white. And I think it's never like that, not just with mental health, but with anything in life, really. So in any situation, even if the person is going through something, I mean, obviously, like someone outside might not fully understand exactly what you're going through. But even if the person is going through something, surely you would have discussed that, okay, we need to have some kind of coping mechanism. For example, if we know that you go through these periods where I am just in the doldrums, I can't even speak, perhaps a signaling arrangement could come into play where you say, listen, it's one of those times. I'm really sorry. We'll try catch up a bit later on or something. And then at least you understand what's going on. That puts a little bit of responsibility on the person, even though they're facing whatever mental health issues. Maybe that's too much. I don't know. We could discuss whatever it is that you can handle or can't handle. But I don't like it when we speak that there's either 0 or 100% responsibility. It can't be like that, because in a relationship, there's two people, obviously. So while you're going through whatever you're going through, there's also the other person who's going through something maybe now because of this situation, and not to put blame on a person, because we don't want to say you're causing things, but there has to be some level of understanding and agreement that, yes, you have this thing that you're dealing with, but we can't just say, oh, because you're dealing with something, then everything's okay. It doesn't matter what happens. There has to be somewhere on the scale that, we can figure something out. The alternative, the answer to the question earlier when I was saying how soon into the relationship, like, listen, date 1. This
is so problematic, Dan, but continue.
Date 1.
Tell me why.
Well, speaking practically, as someone who has mental health issues and who does date, who does go to this, few things. So yeah, as soon as possible, I try to give the person who's interested the lay of the land, and that whittles it down very quickly for various reasons. Yeah.
But isn't that a good thing? Then it shows you, like,
that is exactly,
like, who's there, who's
so
not.
what I do is I also partly in therapy and partly from books I've been reading is I have a relationship user manual. So in that relationship user manual, I discuss my interests, my family background, my approach to relationships, my mental health issues, and how to deal with me when I am anxious or when I am depressed, and what I expect from you. And that then makes it easy. So for example, if we're in an argument and things are getting heated, and I say, hey, I need to step away for a second, that doesn't mean I don't care. It doesn't mean I don't want to be with you. it means I need to step away for a second because I'm starting to get anxious and heated. And when I'm anxious and heated, nothing productive is going to be discussed because my body is going to go into fight or flight mode. And the adrenaline is going to overtake my conscious thoughts. And then I'm just going to start, saying things that shouldn't be said or aren't helpful within an argument setting. So stuff like that. So in the event that I do go quiet or I do disappear, which I don't, which it's another thing, is having mental health issues does not give you carte blanche to treat someone poorly, does not give you carte blanche to ignore their needs. What I was trying to say is it should at least give them an informed understanding of what you're going through and how to respond to it. So you can still call someone out, but at least now, if you've been given the full understanding of what they're dealing with, you're not asking yourself why. You understand why. Yeah. It's just, babe, I know you're anxious, or I know you're stressed, I know you're depressed, I know you don't want to speak to me. However, as your partner, I just need you to check in with me. You don't even have to email me. You don't even have to text me. Just email me and say every morning, hey, babe, still offline, I'm okay. And for some people, that's enough. You know what I mean? And then when you're back in a good space, you can have a bigger discussion. So I don't believe in the idea of representatives. I think it's a sad result of societal pressure and so forth. But from the jump, the Phil you meet on date one is the Phil you're going to see throughout. Because as a man who deals with women, like women, whenever you guys go on a date, the first thing you have to consider is, will this date kill me? You know what I mean?
Yep.
So because of that, women are very attuned to identifying inconsistencies, which is why you guys make incredible investigators. And remember some of the most arbitrary reasons. Like on Friday the 16th, you said you went out with the boys. But I just spoke to Josh and he says he was in Canada. So which boys did you mean? And you're like, baby, that was 5 years ago. We're like, yeah, I remember. but stuff like that. And that's because you guys are highly attuned to identifying inconsistencies, because inconsistencies could equals death. Right? So if I'm now sending a representative, there's only so much of that representative that I can keep suppressed. I mean, versus the real me. So eventually, the inconsistent are going to pull through. I don't know. No, Dan, you understand, man.
The first time you meet someone you like, obviously you're going to try to be your best self. That's what we mean, not pretend to be someone else.
No,
amplify your best.
Dan, do you know what I do? I set the bar low. No.
Set the bar low.
When I meet someone, first thing I'm doing is I'm burping and farting, just to let them know.
No, that's why it's dwindling.
Are you here for me?
Mental issues.
I'll be like, this is me. Accept me as I am. That's how you weed out the reals from the fakes.
What you're talking about, Phil, absolutely is right. But I mean, when they were saying representative, they just mean, obviously, when you meet someone for the first time, you'll amplify your best traits and try to suppress your worst. It doesn't mean you're pretending to be someone else. That's naturally how we are. That's how you'd be in a job interview, for example. You don't go into a job interview and just lounge the same way you would at your friend's house. It doesn't mean you're lying about who you are.
But Dan, if I have no negative qualities, then what am I suppressing?
That is a problem. That is a problem many Zimbabwean men face. That's true. That's true.
Thank you. Sorry, we continue.
No negative qualities. Yeah.
Yeah, we're good. Yeah, I was going to say that.
Phil, you're ultimately agreeing with me, which is you don't get carte blanche because you are suffering from a mental health issue. You still have to have some level of responsibility, and you will know best what your limits and what your boundaries are. I mean, so that's why you would discuss that beforehand.
Exactly.
I'm exactly what you're saying.
Yeah. I think, like I said, the whole point of these discussions and the whole point of the user manual is to alleviate the why. Because whenever someone does wrong by you, or someone hurts you, or someone ignores you, or whatever, like you guys said, ghosted, the first thing you're gonna ask yourself is why.
Why?
So if they've addressed the why, it makes it easier. Then you can, and then now it's dependent on what your tolerance levels are and what you want. Because once again, it doesn't give you carte blanche to behave some way. And on the flip side, that doesn't mean that as a woman or as a partner, you have to adjust your standards. Your standards are your standards. No one has to explain your standards to you. So if you can't deal with someone going quiet for 3 days out of the month, you don't have to explain that and be like, no, but you see, then if they're going silent on you too often, then you're comfortable with, you're justified in leaving.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's always better to have all the cards on the table so that both parties can make informed decisions.
True.
What is unhealthy, even outside of the confines of mental wellness, but just dating in general, is when, what I was alluding to is when people are hiding stuff or they're trying to misrepresent the full spectrum of who they are as a person. And then now the person can't make an informed decision, or even worse, they now start discovering things about you that should have been revealed early on, but now within the relationship, because by doing that, you've now removed that person's ability to make an informed decision, which is messed up. So ultimately, put everything on the table as soon as possible so the people can make an informed decision, because no one wants to invest in a company and then 6 months down the line, they realize that the CEO is a crack addict. I mean, so in the same respect, no one wants to invest in a relationship and then 6 months down the line, they realize that this dude don't shower.
Not to imply that mental health issues are the same as doing crack.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just a yeah.
It's an example, but not really.
Exactly.
You spoke about something earlier, which was around how living in Zim is very difficult. I think Zimbabweans live with a level of trauma to some degree, no matter whether you're in the country, outside the country. Like, there's a lot we've kind of experienced. And a lot of it is unresolved, I feel. And, you know, Amanda and I often talk about like parents and how they just do things and just like, bruh, like, how did this happen? You know, and it's a lot of things that they didn't have the tools, they don't know. So they're just doing what they know with what they can. And I think there's a lot of trauma just in general as a people, as a nation, and a lot of it being unresolved. Do you think that acknowledging unresolved trauma is like, as Amanda said earlier, soft life, like, you should get over it by now. You're now XYZ years old, like you should be over it by now. And how then do you even approach dealing with those kind of traumas that you realize, oh, I actually never resolved this issue or this trauma, and how do I then move forward with that?
I would say first and foremost, if you do, like everyone needs therapy to some degree. In the same respect that you go for a doctor's checkup every year, every human should go for therapy, because the world in general, no matter where you grow up, there's trauma. The world is messed up. Like even if you grew up in a utopia, if you just picked up the newspaper, what about? Because the world is traumatic. So I think everyone should at least investigate some forms of therapy, and there are various forms. It could be a group discussion that's facilitated by a therapist or even someone just qualified to have group discussions. It could be therapy. It could be basic cognitive behavioral therapy worksheets or processes, which is like asking yourself Socratic questions or just trying to understand why you have a certain thought pattern. So say, for example, the perfect example is being a Zimbabwean. I realize it myself. When I have a substantial amount of Zim dollars in my account, I immediately start stressing. And I ask myself, wait a minute, why do I stress when I receive a payment notification? It's because I've lived through multiple economic crashes where I know if that money is sitting in my account, it's losing value every second. So I end up having to buy stuff. And most recently, I think it was 2018, just before, I think it was SI 2000 was brought in, where they forced us to switch to Zimbabwe and the rate shot up. And I had money sitting on my account and the rate was going crazy. And I went to the supermarket and I bought things I didn't need. I left there with like 5 trolleys, like buying 6 cases of bubble bath. I don't take bubble baths that often. You know what I mean? And I had to sit
the key. the key phrase there, that often.
Yeah,
No.
often.
No, as Dan can attest, as someone who stayed with me, I like this soft life. That's another thing. Like girls will come over and they'll realize, wait a minute, Phil, there's more hygiene products than me. And then now I'm judging you because I'm like, why do I have more face wash products than you? You gotta go, girl. Anyway, I digress. So the point is, once you start asking yourself that questions, it's obviously not going to solve the whole issue, but it's at least going to give you the tools to understand why you behave a certain way. And when you understand why you behave a certain way, you're able to articulate it to other people. Now, like your partner, your family, your friends, hey babe, I lived in Zimbabwe. I went through this. As a result, I deal with anxiety this way. And then whether or not they understand it, they can even help you go through it. So wait a minute, but you do realize that right now you don't stay in Zimbabwe anymore, maybe you stay in Australia, and we don't have those issues. So maybe work through that, because there are people, Zimbabweans in particular, that I know, because they haven't resolved those issues, they find themselves accruing assets that end up negatively affecting their portfolio. Which is why, for example, if you come to Zim, you'll see a ton of these massive houses that are falling apart and derelict because people had cash in hand. They were like, I need to buy an asset, otherwise this money is going to be useless. They buy homes they can't maintain, and now those homes are losing value. That's a legit thing. I used to have a boss. He spoke to me and he was like, Phil, if I have $1 million in my account, I can't sleep at night because that money should be working for me. Because he too is a Zimbabwean and he's been doing the same thing. So it can start as something as simple as that in terms of the financial issues, and it can be far more traumatic. I mean, I don't think we have to cover every minutia of the traumas we experience as Zimbabweans, but some of them are very politically charged. Some of them are very serious. Some of those really do require psychiatrists and therapy and medication, because people have seen a great deal of traumas. I mean, if you just happen to watch the news after the last set of elections, we all know what we saw there. That is traumatic.
Yeah.
So everyone needs to at least understand. I'm certainly not going to force everyone to go into therapy, but I will say just find someone you can speak to, and someone you can speak to who actually wants to hear, because that's another thing. You also don't want to be that person who's constantly offloading onto a friend, and then now that friend doesn't have the tools or resources to deal with that weight. And now they're now suffering from depression because you just offload, and now you've offloaded, so you're good, but now they're suffering. So also be cognizant of that.
True, Dada. That's so true.
If your question as well, so it sounds almost like you're asking if people's response is, if you have trauma, get over it. We all have trauma.
Yes.
And if someone chooses to deal with that trauma, then it's almost like they're trying to live a soft life.
Yes.
That's kind of what I understood by the question.
Yes.
Which, I mean, I think we all know that's not a great viewpoint. Let me use nice words. Imagine telling someone, get over your broken leg, or, oh, you were in a car accident. Psh, everyone's been in a car accident. Get over it. Just
walk it off,
bandage
buddy.
yourself
Walk it
off at home. So it's exactly the same thing. And I mean, it's not soft life. It's just a lack of understanding. It's true that many people have had to go through trauma without resources to deal with it. But why wouldn't you deal with it if the resources are available and accessible to you? Why would you choose not to? Because those who needed it didn't have the resources available. If it's there, go take advantage of it. Why would you choose to suffer? That's because real men don't. Get out of here, man.
Yeah. So good, Dan. And it's also helping you, even if our forefathers had their issues that they didn't deal with, it's okay for us to work through it. So we also know how to relate to them, understanding that maybe they didn't have the tools, they may never seek the help, but it also gives us a level of like, how do I respond in these environments? How do I deal with, that's the other thing. It's also empowering you or us to know how to work in those environments and situations, so we don't keep getting triggered and falling back to, patterns that were not helping us along the way. Thank you guys. That was really helpful. Thanks.
Yeah. And I think it does permeate into your like other relationships or dealings with people if you've got unresolved mental issues. Because it's like you're carrying this weight, right? And anything like a balloon, anything that pokes at it, it would just, people be like, whoa, why are you so upset about this? And it's like such a trigger from something that you haven't really acknowledged. So I think the living a soft life thing is like an opinion people have when they just like, well, you know, oh, well, I dealt with it, so you can. But it's like, if they, as Dan said, if they had the opportunity, I'm sure they would want to have like sought proper help instead of just. You know,
sorry, so something's really been eating at me since we started. I kind of feel like I'm talking about a topic that I should, like, I don't have the credentials to be talking about. So just a disclaimer, I don't view myself as an expert. Like you guys, I'm just an observer because we have a podcast that where we speak to, you know, therapists and mental health experts and advocates and stuff like that. So, you know, I get to observe and learn a lot. So I'm speaking only my observations. And that having been said, I must say, ever since we've started, there's so many situations where I notice, like I see someone's reaction or response or however they're dealing with things. And it makes me think of, this reminds me of a conversation we had with Dr. So-and-so. Yeah, you need therapy, girl. You know, that kind of situation. Just this week, for some reason, people call me to rant, or if they have issues, happens quite a lot. Just this week, I was listening to one, I was like, yo, there's a lot here. And it's really not about who's right or who's wrong. It's just you need to speak to someone about a lot of things that you're dealing with and carrying. And it makes me realize that most of us are just walking around without realizing that our natural responses to things are based on traumas that we've had and unresolved issues. How much, like, think about all the drama and mess we get ourselves into, or we find ourselves in, thinking that it's through no fault of our own. Meanwhile, it's all these unresolved things that, hey, if I just spoke to someone and they gave me the resources to deal with this, like, I would have never had to deal with this. And I'm sure maybe sometimes there's things I don't notice in myself that others perhaps also notice, like you're saying, you know, people will see how you respond to something and just like, okay, clearly there's something going on. And sometimes it may not be in a huge dramatic response. Sometimes it's in the little decisions that we make or stuff like that, you know, or difficulties in trying to stick to plans we've made or whatever the case is. So trauma is probably the biggest driving force in many of the things that we're going through, and
why not try to deal with it? Because like I find even for myself, I had to go through grief counseling because I lost my my mom at a young age, at a pivotal age, teenage. You know, you're 14, you're thinking, oh, you know, always gonna have that person to have your back, taken away. And then in Zim, it's like, well, who hasn't had a parent who passed away or an aunt? Or so it's like grief is such a thing that people don't really, you know, you have the Namo, you have the whatever, tombstone, and then peace, we're all out, you know, next. And like, I found like in my relationships, a lot of times, then you just cut off people so quickly because you're like, I can't really go that level with you because I myself am scared. Like, I'm obviously scared that I don't want to have you to be that important in my life, because then one day if you're not there, what am I going to do if I start to rely on you? So I do think like what you're saying is so right, because if you yourself can't recognize those things and other people can see it as clear as day, it's almost like you're walking around with blinkers in your own life. And everyone's like, dude, if you literally just let this go or found a way to deal with this, you would see your life the way we see you, you know, you see your light the way we see you. So yeah, man, it's funny how it comes out in the smallest of ways.
Yeah, and I think also to piggyback on what you guys are saying, I think it's also very important to understand how without thinking, people can fall into patterns of unhealthy behavior because that's what other people do. Like, and that goes across the spectrum. Like, I'm sure we're all at that age. Dan has succumbed. He was the first to crack. But when you cross the age, they're like, yo, why aren't you getting married? Why aren't you having kids? And you ask them why, and they're like, no, because that's what you do. And if you ask why enough times, they're like, okay, we don't know actually, because that's just simply what society says you should do. But when you break it down, societally, the whole confines of marriage and dating have changed so much because the world has changed so much that you can't approach it the same way people used to, which is why, for example, you find people struggling with dating right now because the landscape is so different than it was when even our parents were dating. And because of that, a lot of people get into really unhealthy thought patterns or unhealthy activities or actions simply because they think that's what you should do. And even on TV, like reality TV is the devil. And you see like people, like on reality TV, people react for the camera. They react for drama. And people now think that's the norm. Oh, okay. So if I see a girl looking at my man funny, I should do that. Or if my girl is doing this, I should do that. And as Dan says, if people come to you and they start ranting and you ask them, wait a minute, why did you do that? Like, because that's what I'm supposed to do. I'm a man. That's what I'm supposed to do. I'm his woman. You're like, no, really? What makes you think that? And if you ask why enough times, it'll just boil down to, but that's what you should be doing. And I think, if anything, even if you're not in therapy, ask yourself why at least 4 times for any major action. And when you get down to the root, you might be surprised what is behind that action.
Just to clarify, I haven't been struggling dating. I've been quite successful, and I am offering advice to those who are less successful. You can subscribe to my daily relationship devotionals. But if I can give you a free piece of advice now, ladies, if you're interested.
Shoot.
When you move with the spirit of a girlfriend as opposed to the spirit of a wife, you know, energies are just different. So adjust your spirit, you see. I think that's as clear as day.
And the other way too.
Yeah, please.
I try to tell Phil, you have to move with the spirit of a husband, a husband. Even if you're not planning to become a husband, there's just different spirits, you know. I think this is the clearest thing, honestly, guys. So that's the first free lesson.
So where do we subscribe for this? Sorry, we just would like our listeners
to go to youtube.com/Dennis Jackson. That's Dennis Jackson.
Thank you very much.
It's funny though that you brought up like, you know, male, female. Do you think with like mental health or like mental wellness, it's different for women than for men? Like us talking about it, I know women do a lot of this whole self-care Sundays and we, you know, meet with the girls for brunch or whatever it is.
I do that.
Come through.
But like, do you think just generally, like even from your listeners and what, you know, feedback you guys have gotten, that it's different for men versus women?
I think it's obviously different because men and women aren't treated the same. Like men and women aren't raised with the same expectations, and we see that now. I'm a Zimbabwean man, so I can speak to it. I thank my mother for raising me the way she did, because my mother raised me. She was like, "Yo, if you ate from that plate, you're gonna wash that plate. You're gonna clean your room. You're gonna cook your own food. You're gonna cook for the family, that type of thing." So by the time I left home thinking I was filthy. You know what I mean? I thought I left home thinking that I wasn't good. And then I moved in with Dan. I was like, oh, you know, Mama raised me right. But
maybe we'll cancel
We'll
cancel the subscription to your.
I'm just making sure the wife knows what she's getting into. But jokes aside, what that translates to is the bar is on the floor when a woman can come over and say, "Wait a minute, Phil, you cooked this? Wait a minute, Phil, you have toilet paper in your bathroom? Yeah, you have wet wipes, stuff like that."
Guys, toilet paper.
But that's just on the top level.
You would be surprised.
But societally, women get treated very differently because the expectations are different. And we just came out of the festive season. I'm sure you guys understand it. When women, for a lot of women, the festive season is not a holiday. You're just changing your responsibility. You're leaving the day job and you're now becoming the maid for like 2-3 weeks, and you're gonna go back to your day job. And as men, I think it's incumbent on us to be cognizant of that and be empathetic and be like, hey, if you need a holiday, let me actually give you a holiday. And women also need to understand that, granted, it's a patriarchal society and men were very involved in creating the patriarchal society. But within that, there's a lot of expectations and pressures. So like women will come to a man and be like, I expect a man to be able to provide and take care of me, this, and the third, which is a fair request in isolation. But when you now look at the grander societal picture, and Jan and I joke about this, but it's true. Like if a woman from the UK or South Africa, even South Africa, for example, today's Zimbabwean man, we joke about it, but it's true. You are, for the most part, you are the breadwinner. Because no matter how well he's paid, no matter how good his job is, you are always going to earn more than him. And if you speak to some of these people in managerial, even C-suite positions, you'll just understand just how dire the situation is. So it's not then fair for you as a Zimbabwean woman to expect to date a Zimbabwean man in Zimbabwe, and you're asking him, "Go, babe, when are we going to the Maldives?"
Malawi?
I'm trying to make rent. You know what I mean? Like that type of thing. And if people aren't having these honest, open conversations about small stuff like that, it's going to seep into bigger things. So ultimately, it all boils down to empathy and communication. I think if we could be more empathetic and be better at communicating, it would address a lot of the issues that we as a nation, as a society, as a people are facing. Because if you at least understand where someone's coming from, it's a lot easier for you to give them grace and also to call them out when they overstep.
Also, in terms of acceptance, there definitely is a difference, because society being very patriarchal, and especially, you know, groups of men and how they, you see, I don't want to use a lot of these buzzwords, you know, the Twitter words, but toxic masculinity is a thing. You know what I mean? Like groups of men have certain like viewpoints about each other, about what it is to be a man. So when it comes to acceptance, I think a lot of people are a lot more accepting that, oh, you know, a woman is in therapy. Oh, yeah, that's par for the course. That's expected. A man is in therapy. Wait, what? What's wrong with him? I feel like society views it like that a lot. And that causes a lot of problems, not to get into discussions of who needs it more, who doesn't need it more, because everyone has their own unique challenges, and men have unique issues that they have to deal with, and women have unique issues that they have to deal with. But I think for men, it's approaching a very dire situation, because oftentimes men are in a position where what they say and do has influence over more people. It could be over the family, you know, or it could be over a work environment where repeatedly we see that very often men are placed in positions of authority more than women, and so on. And that man who has this position of influence over people around him, a position of power over his family, over his wife, his kids, has all these traumas that he has never dealt with. Meanwhile, society expects him to just be a man, shake it off. And on top of that, there's expectations that, no, if you're a man, you're supposed to do this and that. And there's traumas, and there's whatever emotional baggage, and who knows what mental health issues you're dealing with. More men need to get into therapy, absolutely, because if society doesn't accept it, and just think of the boiling that's happening just under the surface for so many men. And the flip side of this is, I don't want to make it seem like, oh, men have it bad or whatever, like, you know, some of the incel logic that's going around right now. It's just a simple matter of, we all have things that we need to deal with, and because of society's expectations, probably a lot of men don't take steps to deal with it, whereas women, maybe it may not be the case across the spectrum, but I think as a general rule, it's more accepted for a woman to set aside time to help or to deal with their mental health issues, or to have a self-care day, or you know, I'm just going to pamper myself today and whatever. And maybe men don't do that as much, or their version of what self-care or pampering is actually exacerbating the problem.
Yeah,
for sure. I almost had to also unlearn the sort of stereotypes associated with what it means to be a man. So even as women, I think we also need to understand that men in general are struggling because of the sort of standards they've been held to, like, this is what it means to be a man. Big men don't cry, you know, that kind of thing. But even unlearning that, so that our expectations as women for what we expect in men, whether it be our brothers, whether it be our friends, whether it be our partners, or we have to shift that too, because I didn't realize it. And I remember when it dawned on me, I was like, I didn't realize I had this idea, because I think I'm a forward-thinking, open-minded person, but it's actually the ingraining, and there's a lot of unlearning that has to go on as a society in general around what it means to be a woman, what it means to be a man. Is it okay to ask for help? Is it okay? You know, things like that. So that's something I also kind of have learned, that as a society, it's a lot of unlearning and being uncomfortable, being different, and saying that I don't have these expectations of men, or I don't have these expectations of women. And I stand by it, even if family will be like, you know what I mean? Like things like that. It's like, yeah, exactly. It's like, well, I'm going to help her. Or if, you know, he needs to take time off, you know what I mean? So there's also like a role we play in supporting each other as men and as women with regards to our mental wellness.
Even in small things. So I see a stereotype, and something I've seen in myself as well, that is often joked about, is like, yeah, men don't ask for directions. Lol. I mean, I've joked about it itself, but I've seen a reluctance sometimes to ask for help. You could be lost somewhere, like, no, I'm supposed to figure it out. I'm the man who's supposed to figure it out.
Yeah.
Logically, that makes no sense. Why? Why would you hold yourself to that step? What does it? It doesn't change. It doesn't make you less of a man because you were lost. What? That's crazy. But I think those little things, and I've seen it. Like, I felt it myself. I've been with other people in the car. It's like, just ask someone where we're supposed to go. Ask someone. What am I? Some kind of chump? I'll figure it out myself.
Chump. I love that word. 1000%. And I think as we bring this to a close, I wanted to ask any advice you can share. Obviously, your podcast delves more in depth with regards to mental wellness. As Danny says, he's not a professional. We're not professionals. We're just sharing our thoughts and experiences, but they also speak to some different people around the topic of mental health. And you can definitely check out their podcast for more information about this. But we just love to leave our listeners with some advice on tools and resources that they can use. I've personally used BetterHelp with being away from home, wanting to get a therapist of color. I knew I wasn't going to get it here. Someone who could speak English, I knew I wasn't going to get it here. So I used BetterHelp, and that helped me at a time when I really needed it, especially transitioning to, you know, life here and just being the only Black girl in a lot of rooms and dealing with a lot of unresolved trauma that we spoke about. So, you know, that was a tool I used. I know there are other resources available that you can look at. So I don't know if, gentlemen, you can suggest any for people to check out.
Sorry, where are you, by the way?
I'm in the Czech Republic.
You know, of course, you know.
Often holidays. Just the mecca of Yana, of course.
Yeah.
That consciousness, that's where it's at right there.
Yeah.
So do you guys like in a restaurant, do you say check please when you're done? Or is that weird?
They really don't like that because it's so cheesy. They're just like, seriously. And also Czech is not, it's the name of the country is actually Česká republika. Like in their language, it's different to how we say it in English anyway. So it's like, whatever you're trying to pull. But there are some things that have like the check something, check please, check, like people
check
do.
yourself before you wreck yourself.
Check yourself. When I came, I was pulling those jokes and everyone was just like, we don't do that here. Must be,
But they're trying to learn English from you, then you're trying to crack these jokes.
Exactly. They're like, teach us English, woman, and leave.
Okay, Phil, some resources.
Ooh. Well, we're building out our page, so that's going to be done because we've got a bunch of resources that we're getting from our therapy partners. I would say check out Wired to Love and Thrive. The majority of our guests on the podcast all have their own websites with their own resources that they offer to clients or even just people on social media. So shameless self-plug, but I think that's the quickest way is just go through.
Or Phil, is it a shameless self-prog?
Oh my God!
Oh no! Oh no!
That was
Oh,
the
no.
viral. That was like
We started something. Mm-hmm.
Someone, please kick him out the room. Please, someone, just kick him out. But yeah, I think start there. I listen to a bunch of podcasts on the topic. It all depends what your interest is. But I think the advantage of being alive today is there's so many resources. Like if you feel that you're suffering in some form of way, you really just have to Google. Just Google coping with depression, coping with homesickness, coping with anxiety, coping with being the only Black woman in the workforce. Guarantee you will find resources available. The only thing I'd say is just learn to vet resources. So just make sure that the information you're being provided with is by qualified people. And the best way to do that is to make sure that these people have some form of qualifications and they're part of some sort of organization or community and they are active within that community because those people then vet them for you. So if you come across a quote unquote self-help guru with no certifications and he's not part of some sort of self-help guru certification board or group where other gurus are checking on what they're doing, trust and believe, more than likely they're selling you snake oil. That's the simplest way to vet. So I'd say do that. If they have published works in trusted medical journals, even better, you'll know solid. But I'd say do that. Like there's so many resources available. What we're trying to do is just make sure that there are resources available for Black Zimbabweans because that's where they're lacking. Because contextually, you might struggle. But for the basics, that's available. Like as you mentioned, there's BetterHelp, but as a trainer on BetterHelp, African therapists,
Yeah.
you know, you might find a Black therapist, but contextually, even someone who's Black and means well, there's stuff they will just never understand about Zimbabwe. They'll stuff they'll never get culturally. So, but that's further down the line. If you're at the point where you just need help, just Google it and then just vet the people that are giving you advice. And by all means, make sure that it's not coming from the Joe Rogan podcast, and you'll be fine.
Also, one of the guests that we had recently, he revealed to us that the number of, psychiatrists that exist in Zimbabwe, how many did he say, Phil? I'm sure it was less than 10.
He said we're down to 6, yeah.
6 in the whole country. So it's no surprise that it's difficult to find one here. But I think we've done a pretty good job on the podcast so far. And all credit goes to Dr. Nyarai for that, Dr. Nyarai Paweni, of really identifying a lot of different professionals in different spaces within, therapy and mental health and mental wellness as a whole. Across all kinds of, there's something for you, definitely, whether it's art therapy or music therapy or whatever, or just, regular go sit down in front of a psychiatrist kind of situation. So just checking out the podcast. I know it's less funny and jokey than our regular podcast, but Mental Wellness Mondays is now up. It's part of the Two Broke Twimbos network. So if you subscribe to Two Broke Twimbos, you'll be able to get that podcast. And a lot of the time, the episodes are 30 to 45 minutes. You can just hit play on it while you're doing something else. And there's all kinds of resources, ideas, thoughts that always come up in that podcast. So you're welcome to check that out. Another thing is, if you don't want to, the ultimate goal is get a therapist. I think we've spoken about that on here. We speak about it on the podcast. Find a therapist, find some way to speak to someone. But if you are not ready to take that step, or you can't afford it, or maybe you're not sure what it's like, I think it's such a potentially good thing to send in your problem anonymously, and we'll put it in front of a therapist, and you can hear what they'll say, and you can hear where they would direct you. And I mean, it's almost like a free trial of therapy before you buy. So twobroketwimbos.com/help is something that you can also just write whatever's on your mind. You can be anonymous if you like, make yourself a fake name if you want, and we will at some point get it addressed by a professional.
And can we normalize couples going to therapy too? Because I'm married.
Hey,
and I
can you
really
cut that out?
can say-
Oh gosh. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, no, absolutely.
Because
that out.
some people just head to the divorce bill, and it's like maybe you could actually work through it. Anyway, sorry, it's not to say.
For sure.
It sounds like there's something going on.
Savage.
We'll deal with it another time.
It's okay. It's okay.
It's okay.
So, Mr. Amanda, I mean, clearly she's
Mr. Amanda.
Yes, actually, let's normalize that. Yes.
So just maybe just give it to one time. You know what I mean? Just go to therapy. Like, you don't even have to pay attention. Just pretend to be there, and then when you come back, you can be like, oh, babe, I went to therapy. So can you please let me go watch the game for like 3 weekends? You know what I mean? Stuff like that. Just
It'll be good for you. Good. And as well, I think, Rumbi, do you think in the Czech Republic, is there a lot of emphasis on mental wellness, mental health? I somehow have the thought in my head that it's also a lot more traditional.
They are more traditional, but also progressive in some ways. It's quite fascinating. But for example, I teach English at a school, and they have an in-house therapist for the children if they have issues, and they talk to the parents, they talk to the children too. So it also depends. There's help to work through things for sure, but they also have elements of them, I think, like any society, where they are more reserved in terms of, I don't think there's open to therapy, maybe in some other places, but the resources are there, if that makes sense. It's still, there are a lot of parallels sometimes I draw with Czechs and Zimbabweans at times, where there used to be a higher level of patriarchy, but now it's like women and men are the same, are equal pretty much. And
oh yes, that's definitely happening in Zimbabwe. Yeah.
No, but they've had a long history of like maybe not being the same. So it's like they're like what Zimbabwe could be in a while, but they still have sort of traditional values and traditional views too, like about men go drink beer, and women, you know what I mean? Like things like that still play a part, but they're progressive in other ways, like men taking care of children, and, being supportive, having paternity leave, things like that. So it's quite interesting, even though mothers still play a dominant role. Fathers and mothers are equally involved in children's lives. Therapy happens, so on and so forth. So I think there are definitely resources. I just do think the mindset is not as open as other countries around therapy. That's how I feel. Yeah.
And we're
so. If
I see a gap.
Are you married?
Yes. I'm getting married this year.
You are married.
No, I'm getting married. I'm engaged.
Just out of interest, is he?
Congratulations.
No, is he black? No, he's not black.
Or is he?
He's Czech. He's Czech. Yeah. Yeah.
End the call. Bye.
My sister. First of all, congratulations. But also, my sister, can you not see that first they take our land, then they take our resources, and now they take our women's?
Sorry, my internet is breaking. Sorry.
I see a gap here. I see a gap, Rumbi,
Yeah.
for the Czech Republic.
Yeah.
Therapy for men online, but we call it brohemia.
He just really wants a pun.
I gotta hand it to you. Your brain works amazingly, really. I love it. I love a good cheesy.
Check, please.
Check, please. Time to check out. No, yeah. Phil?
So is your man also, is he?
You're asking Amanda?
He's Mr. Amanda.
Oh, Mr. Amanda is German. So
Oh my God.
yeah, guys. Sorry.
Okay, can your next guest be Dr. Umar, please?
That man rises my blood pressure whenever I see his screenshot. I'm like, this dude. I need to have a word with him.
I think you do, my
sister. That's an episode for. We need to.
I think you do, my sister. You need to have a word with him.
About some of your indiscretions, my sister.
One day, may I request a podcast?
Zim men in diaspora are another breed. Can I just say that? Like, let's
not get into it. Yeah,
it sounds like passing the buck. Dan, this doesn't sound like passing the buck. It sounds
like we need to delve deeper into this topic.
Yeah, we need a re-up on this one.
I would love to hear this as a podcast. You know, what is it that you've noticed the differences and why? What drove you?
Plenty.
So, Mr. Does Mr. Rumbi understand the intricacies of paying cows?
Oh,
yeah.
So
he's gonna have to.
He's gonna have. Yeah. Had to explain, break it down. They used to have a tradition like that, but like 100 years ago. So he was like, "Oh, like that was 100 years ago." Yeah.
Yeah, but we're doing it now. Okay.
Yeah.
No, that's good. It's good. Yeah. Okay.
Do you think Baba Rumbi, Baba Dube would have been like, "Hey, come through"? Like, no way. Nah. No way.
They want their cows.
No way. He's like, you may be marrying that European, but let me tell
we
you.
sent our daughter to the Czech Republic.
Yeah. No, definitely you have to.
No. Ultimately, no, we joke. We're happy for you guys. I mean, Dan and I would not exist if it were not for interracial relationships. So, we understand. And I think sometimes people take it a little too seriously. This is just
joking.
I
do believe that in I don't know, 1,000 years, the whole world is going to be beige. You see,
beige. People are saying that.
1,000%. And our parents started it because my parent, like my mom is Shona, my dad is Ndebele, like already, like even if they try, it was intercultural, and we know like that Shonas and Ndebeles, there was some, tension. So at their level, that was the sort of intercultural. So I think when they found out, they also referred back to their own experiences when they were getting married too. So
and then you were
like, onto that plane to Czech Republic, they already knew. They were like,
it's a wrap. Yeah.
Anyway, won't take too much up of your time. We do really appreciate you guys jumping on and conversing with us, especially on this very important topic. We're so grateful. Tenda, thank you.
So invoice, who do I send it to again?
That's our manager. Yeah.
Look, I don't know what has to happen, but whether Mr. Rumbi has to send the
but after Mr. Rumbi hears this episode, this last portion, he might have some thoughts that maybe the invoice should be reversed. Like he should be getting paid. Check, please. No, I'm joking. Yeah.
I mean, look. We accept. Coronas.
What is it?
Corona.
Do you accept love?
They haven't taken on the.
We accept Coronas.
Yeah, check.
Yeah,
Corona.
and
Yeah. Not Corona, not to be confused with the Roro, but.
Any closing remarks, Rumbi?
No, honestly, this has been great. I think real talk. A lot of respect for you, gentlemen, for what you're doing, and how you're spearheading these conversations, especially having built the platform that you guys have, especially because people listen to you. Especially, do you understand? Like, I think it's such a great thing that you're out there doing the thing, especially in our country and for our people. So thank you so much for your time. Honestly, I couldn't I don't have much else to say aside from thank you. It was very insightful and very helpful. And yeah, I don't know if you gentlemen want to share any of your what's happening, upcoming projects. You've told us about your podcast, Mental Health Mondays, or is that what you call it? Mental Health Mondays?
Mental Wellness Mondays.
Mental wellness.
I apologize. Mental Wellness Mondays. And anything else coming up that we should look for? Where can we find you on the socials? You already told us your website, Two Broke Twimbos. We will link it all actually in this episode notes. So we will link to their podcast website, your personal. Is it okay if we link your personal, or we just leave the Two Broke Twimbos only on there? You'll let us know. So
yeah, whatever,
we
Obviously,
can have whatever we like. No, I'm joking. Okay, super. So anything else, anything coming up that we should look out for? Anything you'd like to share with the people? Please, this is your time to do your thing.
Damn, we can't say nothing now. It looks like we're not organized.
So next week, catch me shopping for groceries at your local supermarket. No, seriously. Last year was our biggest year. It's just been a busy time, so we're still recapping. But last year was by far and away our biggest year yet. This year is already looking like it's going to be even bigger. So just follow us on the socials. There's a lot going on. We do have a lot planned, a lot lined up, a lot in the works. So yeah, just follow us on the socials. And if you like what we're saying, subscribe to our podcast. And if you really, really like us, then please do support us, because we also do need not only people to support the podcast and keep that going, but we also do need people to support the therapy effort. So all the therapy that we provide to listeners or people that I need is funded by not only ourselves, but by podcast listeners. So if you can, we'd love your assistance. We really appreciate that. And besides that, let's make the world a better place.
Yeah, and if you're looking for relationship advice, you can just DM me with your proof of PayPal or whichever payment method, and you can get your daily pieces of advice.
Amanda, do you have anything you want to say?
No. I guess
super.
I'll just stop.
Thank you so much for listening. Again, thank you to Phil and Dan, or the Two Broke Twimbos as they're known. We are so glad to be back, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care, everybody. Bye.
Toodaloo,